Hi everybody, Mike here. I love the summertime. I love the outdoors. I just don't like mosquitoes. So, in our Interview of the Week segment, we are going to talk to an expert from the Centers for Disease Control about how to stop mosquitoes from bugging us. Joining us now from Fort Collins, Colorado, is Dr. Janet McAllister from the Center for Disease Control. And thank you for making some time for us. So we're talking about bugs and insects. And before we get into that, why don't you tell everybody, share a little bit about your background and your specialty there at the CDC.
Okay, so I'm a medical entomologist. I do research on mosquitoes. I look at ways to control mosquitoes. I also look at insecticide resistance.
You're everybody's favorite person right now because we're all swatting mosquitoes and we're all having interesting times with mosquitoes. So would you start off by giving us an idea of what we need to be worried about with mosquitoes? Now, we keep hearing about West Nile. We keep hearing about Zika. Are those, how big of a problems are those nationwide? And are there other problems about mosquitoes besides the irritating bites that we get from them?
Yeah, so West Nile virus is the most common virus that is spread by mosquitoes in the United States. And it is found or has been found in the past in all of the lower 48 states. So we don't see it in Hawaii and we don't see it in Alaska. There are some other viruses that are what's called endemic in that they are found in the United States. Those would be lacrosse encephalitis, eastern equine encephalitis, and St. Louis encephalitis. Those are pretty similar to West Nile virus, but they're not as commonly found in the U.S. Things like Zika virus are not endemic in the United States. So we will see Zika virus when it is introduced from other countries, but it's not circulating all the time in the U.S.
I guess some of my other colleagues in the more traditional media seem to jump all over every time a West Nile virus is reported or a Zika virus is reported. But for the average person, and in our case, our audience, the average RVer who are traveling all around the country, how worried do people have to really be about this?
For most people who might become infected with West Nile virus, they may not even know that they're infected. And so the disease itself ranges in severity from you don't know you have it all the way through neurological damage, paralysis, and maybe even death. But the severe forms of West Nile virus, out of all of the people who may be bitten by a mosquito and become infected with the virus, maybe 1 in 150 of those people are really going to become sick enough to go seek medical help and to maybe have one of these severe outcomes. At least the severe disease that they cause is pretty rare.
Well, that's encouraging to hear. Now, that doesn't say that we aren't bugged. Oh, terrible pun. That is I'm sure you've heard that before. That we aren't bothered a lot by mosquitoes and other flying insects. What are some of the simpler things that we can do? I did a video once where I tried every gadget and every claim that I could find on the internet, from skin so soft on your arms to some electronic thing and a fan, and none of them worked. So from an expert, when we're out at a campsite or we're outside, what are some of the things we can do to minimize the problem we have with mosquitoes?
So wearing mosquito repellent is one of the primary things that you can do to prevent mosquito bites. You can also dress with long sleeves and long pants on if they don't have access to your skin. Of course, they can't easily bite through most clothing. If it's something that's really light and gauzy, then they might be able to bite through that. But mosquito repellents are really the number one line of defense for not being bitten by mosquitoes.
So, in terms of the environment, campsites, tall grass, times of day, what are the windy conditions? What are our best options environmentally to avoid being bothered by those biting mosquitoes?
Well, certainly if there's a lot of vegetation around your campsite, like you mentioned, tall grass or bushes, someplace that adult mosquitoes can find harborage in, um, those are going to have be more likely to have mosquitoes in them that would then come out and bite. So more open areas as far as vegetation. Um, and also, people don't like to be bitten by any kind of mosquito, but a lot of the mosquitoes that are going to bite you are not actually the mosquito that's going to transmit some of these mosquito-borne diseases.
I'm curious now, are there different kinds of mosquitoes? I thought there was only one mosquito.
Yeah, absolutely. So people think that a mosquito is a mosquito. They kind of like, if you think about dogs, all dogs are dogs. There may be brown ones and black ones and big ones and little ones and spotted ones, but they're all dogs. And that's not the case. Mosquitoes are more like birds. People get that a hummingbird is a very different animal from a bald eagle. They eat different things, they do different things. And mosquitoes are the same way. So while they all start their life in standing water and end up as this flying pest, they they eat different things. They prefer different types of water. The majority of the mosquito species actually don't even feed on humans. There are some mosquitoes that are specialized so that they only feed on frogs, which they certainly wouldn't be a problem for us.
I always heard it was just a female mosquito that bit. Is that true, or is that one of the
That
myths?
that is true. She needs a blood meal to get enough protein to develop a.
Is there any benefit to a mosquito? I mean, do they do anything? People say snakes, for example, and nobody likes snakes. Most people don't. But snakes do good things to the environment. What about mosquitoes? Is there any is there any function that they form out there other than making us glad to go inside at night?
Well, they do serve as a source of food for other animals. They're not the sole source of food, so there's not any particular animal that only eats mosquitoes, and if mosquitoes went away, that animal would suffer. But they do serve as part of the food chain to us.
And the symptoms that somebody has that should cause them to seek medical assistance. What are those symptoms?
So really, if you feel bad enough to go to the doctor, so some of the symptoms are going to include a high fever. You may have headaches. Occasionally, there could be a rash. Um, I'm glancing over because I have a list of my symptoms here. Um, Body aches, joint pains, vomiting, diarrhea. So these viruses cause kind of a flu-like illness. And certainly flu is associated with winter months. So if you're having some sort of flu-like illness in the summer months, then you should, if they're severe enough, you should be going to the doctor and trying to figure out what is causing those symptoms.
The best time of day or night to avoid a mosquito. And then sunshine versus cloudy days. Anything that we should know about them if we want to minimize our exposure to getting bit by the
Yes. So the majority of mosquitoes feed either at night or right around dusk or dawn. There are some mosquitoes that will bite any time of day or night. Um, some of the some of the more pesty mosquitoes, like the Aedes albopictus or the Asian tiger mosquito, will bite anytime, day or night, but they really don't prefer to get out of the shade. So if they're in the bright sun, that's going to be drying on them. That's going to be detrimental for them. So they tend to not follow you out into bright sunny areas. But
Okay.
certainly on a cloudy day, they don't have that issue. So they can hunt you during the day as well.
Did you say Asian tiger mosquitoes?
Yes. Yes.
That sounds like an invasive species. Is that a normal? I mean,
Yes, it is an invasive species. It came into the United States, we think, through the used tire trade and established itself back in 1986, and has been spreading since then throughout the southeast and now the eastern U.S.
the other thing that we hear about is our ticks. It seems like we're having a kind of an epidemic. I hear of ticks, and we hear so much more about Lyme disease. And I know I don't think that's not your specialty, or maybe it is, but we're talking mostly mosquitoes. But I have to ask about the tick thing. Is that getting worse or better?
Yeah, so certainly ticks are very important, and there are a lot more cases of tick-borne diseases than there are of mosquito-borne diseases. We estimate there's probably on the order of 300,000 new cases a year of Lyme disease. But we have also found several new tick-borne diseases here in the United States. They're pretty rare. But we're just starting to really, I think, scratch the surface on what's going on in ticks.
I know before we get off ticks, I know as we travel, I have seen more signs in places that say ticks are now here. It's almost like they're going into areas that were not much of a problem before. Is there any validity to that, or are we just hearing more about it?
Yeah, so ticks are seem to be expanding their ranges. So we're starting to see some of for example, the main tick that transmits Lyme disease. Its range is expanding. It's expanding further to the west, to the south, and to the north. So it seems to be moving. We don't know exactly why we're seeing more of it, or more of the ticks.
Well, you have certainly, I could go on all day because you've got to. Listen, I want to thank you for helping us get a grip on, how big this problem is, how we can kind of minimize it, what we have to be worried about. And maybe as we get more information about ticks and other things, we can have you back. And I just want to thank you for making time there for us. And Dr. Janet McAllister, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
And it's been a pleasure talking with you. Again, thank you for inviting me to talk with you.
So, bottom line, there's a lot of stuff we can use. Insect repellent, clothes that repel insects, wearing long shirts, long pants, staying out of the shade, and trying to time our outdoor excursions to times when mosquitoes are not that active. Then again, there's winter camping. Hey, if you enjoyed our Interview of the Week segment, please give it a thumbs up here on YouTube. Also, subscribe to our RV Lifestyle channel. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and happy trails. Ow.